It's not in Britain's interest to have a vote of confidence. Do we really want to see, after 100 days, more turmoil in Britain's economy caused by the instability of another election, which no doubt would unfold?
And now, to close the case for the opposition, indeed for the whole debate, I look to Lieutenant Colonel, the Right Honourable Tobias Ellwood, VN.
It's my turn. Firstly, can I, Mr. President, say thank you to everybody who's not left the room already. Really grateful that you stayed here. I was expecting the janitor to walk in shortly with a broom, switch the lights off. I'm going to be thumpy and I'm going to be brief and I'm going to make my point. It's firstly an honour to be here. My sister and my brother came through Oxford. My mother was a fellow at Keble College. I went to Loughborough University. I did sports. And the only time we actually had any debates of anything like this was which rude rugby song we should sing on the way back on the bus after beating you at rugby from Oxford. But it's a real pleasure to be here today. And yes, I've clarified why I've ended up on this side of the aisle, not that. And I'm a bigger picture sort of guy. It's funny, actually, being at this dispatch box. I know it's a mock-up one, but I'm getting flashbacks of what it's like. Do you remember being on the front bench? I noticed that one, Mr. President, is slightly a different size than the other. I don't know if that's deliberate. It doesn't allow me to do Noah's sort of de rigueur next mannequin look of, what was it? That was it? Was that it? There we go, like that. But nevertheless, I will, on a serious note, pay tribute to all of you, because those people who have spoken this evening, the students, it's not an easy job to stand up in front of other people and do what you do. And the pedigree that comes from this place is quite phenomenal. And those of us that didn't study here, coming here to these debates, seeing what you guys do, we understand why now you've produced over 30 odd prime ministers, I think it is, over 1,000 members of parliament. That is something for you to be very, very proud of indeed. And it's a real honor to be here. And who would miss an opportunity to speak? And that's why, even though I'm speaking to say that perhaps it's not the right time to have this judgment made, and that's for two reasons. It's very, very, very simple. Firstly, it's been articulated. We don't even have a leader yet. We're just in the process of doing that. We got a massive thumping in the last election, and we will regroup. And there, Richard was right to actually lay praise to some of the great Labour leaders. But likewise, we have the same on our side. Go back in our past to Disraeli, to Baldwin, to Churchill, to Thatcher, to David Cameron, Macmillan, all these people. My humble advice to my own party is don't go to the extreme. Grab that middle ground, represent Britain. And that has been where I've always wanted to be, is to put the nation first. That's what my adage was when I was in Parliament, and it is today, which is why I say it's not in Britain's interest to have a vote of confidence. Do we really want to see, after 100 days, more turmoil in Britain's economy caused by the instability of another election, which no doubt would unfold?
Point of information.
Go for it.
How can we have faith in a government, speaking of putting this great nation first, how can we have faith in a government that gives away our sovereign land in exchange for the honour of being able to pay for that land to a country with very close relations with China?
Right, well, that's another debate. Maybe we can, Mr. President, mark that down for the next one, but I've not got time to go into that right now. Maybe there's at the end, I'll come back to it. But the point I'm trying to make here today is that there's actually a bigger picture that we're missing. And the reason why I've taken advantage of coming here, not just because it's an honor, but because I have a clarion call, I have a message to you that don't treat this like the X Factor, where next please, didn't like your government, let's have another one. I understand you have this debate every, the first 100 days. It's a thing that you do, part of the freshers' term. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a bigger challenge for the opposition as it starts to regroup, and indeed the government to face up to. And we've hardly mentioned it here today at all. And that's the fact that our world is getting more dangerous, not less. We've been complacent for the last 30 years. We've been too risk averse, and we're seeing an axis of authoritarianism which is going to change our world in the next decade. It's going to get very, very bumpy indeed. And instead, what are we talking about? Taylor Swift tickets and whether we should leave the ECHR. We need to raise the bar. That's what we need to do. And it's so important to appreciate where our world's going, but also our own history in what Britain does to step forward. And when we say step forward, who is it that steps forward? It is the prime ministers of a day. It is the cabinet. It is those leaders. But how many MPs do you need to get one Churchill? And the gene pool of leadership we get goes into the House of Commons. It's the MPs. But who would be an MP today? Now, I know in this particular audience, that number would be quite high, simply because of where we are. But ask that question to any group of business people, or indeed even at schools as well. And the number of people wanting to step into our world are ever less and less and less. And the weakness is that we don't have the British leadership that we now require. So it isn't just about throwing out another government, seeing what the next one will do. More importantly, it's about saying what's happening with China, Russia, and Iran. 3 countries, if you analyze it, that should have nothing in common with each other. One is a theocratic republic, Iran. Russia is a centralized autocracy, and the final one, China, is a communist republic. 3 countries that really should not be working together. Russia and China, if you know your history, had a massive bun fight over the interpretation of communism. Russia actually moved some of its atomic weapons to face China during the Cold War. And Iran and Russia, well, if you know the Great Game, how come they've suddenly become friends as well? And during the Iran-Iraq war, Russia was actually supporting Iraq, giving weapons to Iraq to actually fight against Iran. And Iran and China, it was Iran that was one of the first countries to condemn China because of what happened in the Wuhan lab. And yet these 3 countries have decided to exploit the wobbliness of our international rules-based order. That very order that after the Second World War, we were at front and center at crafting. And that's my challenge here today. That's my clarion call, is don't just have this churn of governments that come in and out, but us ourselves need to recognize what is now required. All these things are important, whether it be dealing with climate change, housing, all the individual matters that we've raised today. But if our economy is affected by security matters, there won't be any money in any of the government departments. 2 quick examples. If the grain ships can't get out of Odessa, what happened? Food inflation went up to what? Was it 19% in this country? Because of what was going on the other side of Europe. And if those ships can't get around the Red Sea, and if Israel, for example, retaliates and hits Iran, and Iran closes the Straits of Hormuz, that's 1/3 of the oil won't be able to get out. And that'll have a knock-on impact on our economy here. Now look where America is going at the moment, more isolated than ever before. Look what Russia is doing. Russia is resorting to type. If you know your history, Ivan the Terrible went east, Catherine the Great went south, Peter the Great went north, Stalin went west. It's like a game of Risk. Know the green space. The best way to defend is to attack. That is what Putin is doing, the most powerful person in Europe. And who's standing up to him? Now, we've got a very good track record of what we've done in Ukraine. But this is not about Ukraine. They're doing the fighting for us. This is about an ideology. This is about Russia at war with the West and at war with Britain as well. And we don't appreciate that either. Russia is at war with us. They've killed people on our territory. They're stealing our intellectual property. And every day there is a cyber attack, because that is the gray zone warfare we're moving into. We're already in a Cold War, and we're sliding towards a world at war, a 3rd world war, but different to the last one. Lots of conflicts around the world. And it's Britain that usually steps forward when other nations hesitate, and that's what we've got to do today. And that's my simple, humble request, is that whether we are in opposition or whether you're in government, work out what that common ground is and educate the British nation, because we are not ready. Our stockpiles are not there. We're not spending enough money on defense, and we're going to find out the hard way that our enemies mean business as they collaborate together and reinterpret the international rules-based order. That is my call today. That's my simple, humble plea. I understand the debate today. Let's think bigger. If we leave a void, we are the worse off. And I look to you, the leaders of tomorrow, to fill that void. Thank you. Thank you.